Well, we're all here, so might as well call the
Let's
meeting
go
to
for it.
order. Yeah. So are there any items that we haven't anticipated that people would like to add to the agenda?
Not from my end, Frank.
Okay. All right, then. Um,
May I
yes.
add a quick agenda item that doesn't have to be official? Who's going to do minutes this time?
Well, did you do them last time?
Did Taylor do them last time?
I don't think there really were any last time. We were like discussing
Oh, that's right.
applicants to the North Sherborn Water and Sewer District. So I can do it this time. I'm all right with that.
Oh, thank you, Taylor.
No problem. Wait, Meredith, out of curiosity, when these are recorded, is there a way to have a transcript spit out as well?
Uh, um, yes, and you can even like then feed that into some AI like minutes, but they're not very good. I think it's better to take good notes, like good brief notes,
Okay.
and then just highlight that. And then if you forget something, go back to the recording, in my opinion.
Okay,
That has
sounds
been.
good.
All right, Frank.
Okay, um, so we have no minutes from last one, so we'll just go right on to our North Sherborn Water and Sewer District. And you can give us the story behind the story. Meredith,
Yes.
you could.
So the very first meeting of the North Sherborn Water Sewer District Interim Committee met on, let me look at it, make sure I get the right date. It was on May 7th at 7 p.m. And officers were selected. Andrea Stiller is the chair. And there are both voting members, 5 total. And then there are associate members that are non-voting. And we met and got an update on how things were going from the perspective of the 2 select board members who are on the interim committee. Marion Neutra, I think, spoke the most, and then also Jeremy Marset spoke a fair amount. And they gave the history, goes back to 2017. And there has been a shift in what developer they've been talking with, what they were hoping to get from the various towns. Right now, they're in talks with Framingham for water and Natick for sewer. And things were going very well until a couple of weeks ago. And then regulations came to the fore. So let me share with you something. And I will tell you, Frank, when we talk about that Dover regulation, this is going to be my counter, which is that regulations, well, often well intended, often also have unintended consequences.
I'm sure they do.
So it turns out in the state of Massachusetts, there is a interbasin transfer regulation. It is 313 CMR 4.00. And it details, well, I'll just read the first sentence here. This regulation delineates the river basins of the Commonwealth and establishes the procedures and criteria upon which the Water Resources Commission shall determine the applicability, insignificance, approval, or denial of any proposed action to increase the present rate of interbasin transfer of water or wastewater. So any development that will, as a part of it, include interbasin water or wastewater transfer is subject to this regulation. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Guess where the North Shore Water Sewer District sits? And guess whether or not everything is in the same water basin. And the answer is no and no. It is no in the direction of Framingham. It is no in the direction of Natick. There are actually 2 there would be crossing over of water basins for both infrastructure. And so infrastructure. So what that means is that this governing body has the ability to, the Water Resources Commission has the ability to tell any developers, municipalities, whomever, that they either can or cannot transfer water from one basin to another. It was noted during the North Sherborn Water Sewer District Interim Commission meeting that water is constantly transferred from one basin to the other as it goes from well past Framingham to Boston, both for water and sewer. But that is not, that just because that is that there's a lot of flow doesn't mean that this flow is not going to be looked at. And so what happened, to make a long story short, as a result of this regulation, it may be just a step that needs to be checked off before the proposals and the intermunicipal agreements are approved. Or it could be a step that then essentially nullifies the entire project. But the Toll brothers, who are the current developers related to the Coolidge Crossing and the Meadowbrook, I don't remember. Sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head what that community would be called, Meadowbrook something. They have been asked to show whether or not they can get sufficient well water supply to supply the entire development with a public water supply, a public well water supply. There are 2 existing wells on the site, and they were able to get some amount of water, and they have been asked to drill 2 additional wells to see if they can get a sufficient gallon per minute supply for a 187 apartment, 187 unit combined
Jeez.
development. And even if they get a good enough well supply, but then there's also the sewer. So there could be the request that they determine whether or not they can use septic system there. But if there is a public well water supply, and certainly if there is a septic requirement, both of those then nullify the ZBA approval for the project. And that's where it's at.
When I first heard this, I thought that the Toll brothers were trying to get by on the cheap just by drilling some wells rather than connecting. But it sounds like they're being forced to do this, right? To prove that they can't do it or something.
Yes, it is a regulation that got triggered somehow, somewhere by someone. No, I don't think the full story is known, or at least it wasn't described to us, but I don't think it was known. And one could imagine that the Toll brothers would have some reason to think that that is something to pursue. But I think they also, I don't know what they think, but it's definitely an unexpected twist.
Yeah.
An unexpected twist that needs to get resolved. And hopefully it is simply a step to be checked off.
Of course, even if they get
possibly it's not.
Even if they get enough GPM out of it, it still means they're sucking things from the Framingham contamination site too. They'll be pulling a lot of water.
There's contamination issues, there's just
So that
supply
might make it
issue, there's
worse.
fire safety issues, there's, yes, all of that.
So
But it could just be a step.
Are Natick and Framingham in the same basin watershed?
Let me find that. I'm sorry, I did not prepare better for this, but
No,
let me
that's
get
okay.
up.
I think they are. I think the layout is a little I'm Googling it
There's a
too.
Sudbury watershed and there is, hang on, let me, if you guys chat, well, I try to pull up.
Of course, the
Um,
sewage goes to Boston Harbor anyway, so that's definitely another
Well, that was mentioned
basin.
that, but what happens in other places, there is a date. If you scroll down, is I think in 1984, where that was the baseline, March 8, 1984. So anything that was in existence before that date is grandfathered in essentially. And hang on. And also the rate of transfer, not the number of gallons, but the rate of transfer was set during that time. Hang on, let me open up.
You mean like percentage rather than
Yeah, it's
gallons?
a percentage. It's not as far as I could tell, it's not an actual flow rate here. Let me see if this, Jeremy sent out a bunch of things. Let me see if I can get this. Share, I'm gonna do this. So Meadowbrook Commons, yeah, and Coolidge Crossing. All right. And there, let's see if this has the, I think this one has the, nope, hang on.
It looks like
Like,
Framingham is in the Sudbury River Basin, and we're in the Charles River Basin, and so is Natick.
okay, but there still was something with Natick. I'm gonna check one more file. Hang on. I should have prepared a little bit. Let's see. It may have been a subsequent one, but please do keep chatting. I'm going to keep looking. But yes, certainly there is a Sudbury. That may be it. I may
Okay.
not find it
So they,
anytime soon.
no, that's okay. So Toll Brothers was asked by whom to do the additional well testing?
The Water Resources Commission.
Oh, they did. Okay, so folks have already gone to the State Water Resources Commission about this interbasin transfer situation.
Someone has somehow triggered a connection, and it is regulated by them. So I suppose it's better to have it now than once, shovels are in the ground, and then it would have to be stopped in order for this to be.
Interesting. Okay, well, I guess, yeah, I mean, so they've been asked to see if they can draw more water from that site. And then they've been asked to look at septic too, or is the assumption that they'll still send wastewater to Natick?
Um, our understanding is that my understanding, and I am in charge of those minutes and I am not done with them. Well, and I base them off of Andrea's notes.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it would impact both though. And it really sort of, I wish I could find the delineation of where the basin watershed, high point is, because I believe it kind of cuts through the site.
That's what I sort of thought when I was looking at
Yeah.
something a week or two ago, that it sort of split it a little bit,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. There, and so it's not, my understanding, and Frank, you were there as well. It seems
yeah.
like both water and sewer were going to have to be approved for the infrastructure would have to be approved for, for this interbasin transfer thing. That's really it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm actually, I think, yeah, SUASCO is short for Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord watershed. And you are absolutely right. It does this ridiculous cut right at the corner there of Coolidge and Speen.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you couldn't do that. Like draw a worse line for that. I'm seeing that map. Um, wow. Okay. Interesting. So, whew. Well, the septic thing becomes very interesting too, because I have some friends who live on Meadowbrook there, and they said depth to water table is like 10 feet, something ridiculous. So,
Well,
I'm surprised
I
it's that
will,
deep.
I am going to give a heads up, down the road, I do think if the sewer does occur, we, I am hoping that there is sufficient capacity for Sweet Meadow Farm to be able to hook into it, because those people have been existing without septic. All of their wastewater gets pumped, just as a heads up. So I was thinking, although I have no connection with them, my daughter no longer goes. They're a wonderful business, and they have zero. They cannot get a septic field there because the depth of groundwater is so shallow that they
mhm.
can have a bunch of horses.
Uh, yeah, I'm looking. So it looks like that is right on part of an aquifer, but it's kind of a low yielding aquifer.
And
in
that
that
is
spot.
that is like a bypass kind of backup aquifer too. It's not one that gets used. It's a yeah, Frank, that aquifer that goes over there, it's like it is a backup, isn't it?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah, I don't think that is one that is in use right now. And we couldn't tap into it anyways, even if we wanted, is my understanding.
Well,
Interesting.
is there any plan for you, the newbies? I mean, some of the selectmen have you guys to meet with the Toll Brothers at all or not, or?
Not at the moment. I think they are working through this with their legal help, and it is at a level that is much, much beyond what a starting water, starting. We have not been reached out to discuss it. I think they're trying to figure out what to do and
Yeah, so this has been dragging on for 8 years. Is that what you said? 2017?
2017 is when it was first proposed. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
But
wow.
there has been basically a developer stepped away for a time. Frank, do you know? I don't know the
No,
full
so
timeline.
someone did, but I'm not sure if it was Toll Brothers. It might have been someone
No, it
else.
was not Toll Brothers. It was
Yeah.
maybe ask who was the first one? I think there was a bankruptcy even involved in all of this. I could be wrong on that one. Uh, I really need to learn the details, but it's been a drama.
Well, you can understand. I mean, Toll Brothers might have the money backing, but if your capital is a bit slim, you can't wait 3 or 4 years to
No.
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
Who owns the land that it's on?
I believe that would it, I mean, I
Does,
believe
does
that
Sherborn own it?
no, I think I don't know the legal status of the ownership, but my belief from the meeting was that Marion was discussing it as though Toll Brothers at least has the option to buy it. Um, if all of this follows through. And I was kind of under the impression that they kind of did, but maybe not. They're at least there is an option for them to buy it, and that they would trigger that if all of this went forward.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who owns the other piece.
I'm checking the assessor's maps right now.
Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, no problem. It's hard on these things to figure out where everything is. Okay, map 5, it looks like. This won't necessarily tell me who owns it. I'm just curious if it's the town of Sherborn. Meadowbrook. I can't exactly tell like where this thing's gonna be. Um, Oh, all right. 7 and 7A. I don't, yeah, I mean, I don't know who that is, but that's probably the one on that's off of Coolidge and Kendall. That's a big piece of land. And then on the Meadowbrook side, yeah, I can't tell. I think
Then
landowner
there's,
32.
a piece in the middle area that Bob Murchison owns too, or has the right to buy, I guess.
And there are a couple of other homes there. There are, I believe, 3 lots kind of surrounded by
Yeah.
this.
Oh, I see 48 and 48A. Yeah. And then there's like it's like a vacant house there too. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, that will be part of the Coolidge
Okay.
crossing. That would be a tear down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know who owns those. We could look up addresses too. But
And that's something that, I mean, that's a detail that I could easily find out if I sent it.
well, it's no big deal. It's not the town of Sherborn because that's usually labeled TOS on these, I think. I could be wrong. Oh yeah. It doesn't look like town of Sherborn owns those. So okay. Interesting. Well, I guess, yeah, okay. Well, thanks for that
Who
update.
would
That
have
was
known in
very,
Sherborn, there's never a dull moment with water and sewer and septic.
my goodness, man, if I were that developer, I'd be so frustrated, you know?
You'd be looking for another town to do business.
Absolutely. I would never have stuck around for this long. What a pain.
Well,
And
they
then
they have not been the ones around since 2017.
fine, yeah.
That's for sure.
But still, yeah, I mean, they're probably losing money in some capacity as this drags on. So, but
If they do own the land, I mean, across the board, there is appreciation and all. I mean, it's hard to say exactly how they do their
true,
calculations, but
yeah.
and waiting for
But
prices for construction to go down couldn't, but who knows? Who knows?
it's in a way though, it's in another sense not great news for Sherburne because that was going to be like 100 units roughly of affordable housing to get us to safe harbor.
It would get
So,
us to safe harbor until sometime in 2030. Yep.
yeah, and that would stop a lot of the 40Bs and stuff that are coming in hot. So,
Hmm?
well, okay, thanks for that update. You really paid close attention in that meeting, mate, to be able to regurgitate that. Thank you.
Sorry, my details are still really, really
No, they're
mucky,
good. I
but
wouldn't be able to, I would not be able to do that. I never absorb that much from a meeting, so that's great. I guess sort of like how does that affect the water commissioners? We're sort of just stand by until we learn more from the North Sherburne Water and Sewer District, right? There's nothing really in our court for this.
well, I have to say it seems just came in front of the ZBA for a year extension for the comprehensive permit. So Jeannie just posted in the chat, Toll Brothers just came in front of the ZBA for a year extension for the comprehensive permit. So they are sticking around at least for another year. Thank you, Jeannie.
Oh, and Nancy, my wife Nancy just came back from, they were counting the election results and you both squeaked by.
Oh, I'm
Oh, good.
sure.
Okay.
But the more, let's see, and Daryl Beardsley did win did win re-election. That's good. All right. All right. I was gonna say after Chief Ward came, it does seem that one thing that the Water Commission can do, if not, since there's no budget or anything, is at least try to help the town formulate a better fire suppression and management plan. I don't know exactly what it would be called, but that is something that is important. And I believe that if this interbasin transfer thing drags out, it will be important because to have a better understanding of fire suppression and fire suppression needs for the town, because having a 187 unit development on wells is very scary. Unless they put in a lot of cisterns like he was talking about in order to supply water. If there were a fire there that could not be suppressed, that would be very, very.
Yeah. One thing to consider is whether or not there's a hydrant within a couple 100 feet of that intersection as you enter Natick or Framingham. I would think there might be.
A Natick. There is just north of the kind of middle of Meadowbrook, the road north into Natick. There is, but still that one hydrant for 187. You know, it's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
it
no,
would be
for
better
sure.
if it had its own hydrant.
In some of them, there's that back way, once you get down Meadowbrook, you mean,
Yeah.
that goes into the native
Into Natick.
development, yeah.
There is a hydrant over there. There is a
Yeah.
hydrant over there.
And they may have, I don't know how this works, but they may have the option of a dry hydrant along that kind of that creek that goes there that then feeds into Fisk Pond. I don't really know, but that usually has water in it.
But
Sometimes a
still, it
lot.
would be much preferred for it to have its own. And
Sure.
even like maybe a couple for different buildings, because there are 3 like nearly 50 or 60 unit buildings, and then a number of like duplexes or single family houses for the Meadowbrook Commons. But if my memory is serving me well, I'm not.
That's
Yeah,
interesting. So we would deal, all right, remember, I guess a couple meetings ago, I had some interest in looking into how Sherborn could potentially get water from the MWRA. I just wanted to like check that box, but would that, I mean, that would constitute an interbasin transfer too, because that's coming out of the Quabbin or the Wachusett Reservoir, right?
Right.
Yeah. So then we'd have to deal with that there too. So that almost, I mean, it's just another step, but it just complicates
well, and
that
that
idea.
assumes that the average person in town, I would be very much against Sherborn getting water for the MWRA, because then that would be the slow decline into having a town that's just like every other town in every other direction. And it might bring down our property taxes a little bit, but then it wouldn't be a nice, you know, bucolic town.
Yeah.
It would be Natick 2.0.
Yeah.
So are
I am
you
happy that
just to
that's
clarify that, Meredith, just so I understand then, are you kind of generally against the idea of having public water in the downtown? Is that included in that statement there? Is it like just you know what I
I
mean? Like I
well,
guess I don't fully understand.
if they have to build it off of wells, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I'm certain that they would be able to get filtering to get the current water supply to code, not all that much difficulty personally.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Your
so,
concern your concern with looping into the MWRA is kind of the pipe system that would come in from Natick most likely or Framingham. And then people tapping into that. Is that I'm just trying to understand your comment there. Again,
Because
like
if there is a water supply, then eventually there will be a sewer, and then eventually it won't be 1 and 2 and 3 acre lots. It will be like a third of an acre lot, you know, like what would stop division of lots and additional development if you can do that.
yeah, I guess my thought was just like we were talking some pretty huge numbers for uh putting the well in what's that area called?
Morris
The
Road,
Yeah, at the end of Morse there, and then putting in septic under Jameson Fields. It was just getting over like 10 million in today's dollars. So I was just thinking, well, what would it cost to extend a pipe from the North Sherborn Water Sewer District down to town center? That's all I was thinking was Coolidge to Maine to town center.
Well, I can tell you that the I think it's 0.8 miles to Framingham for water and 0.5 miles for sewer to Natick, all of that is gonna be like 10 million.
Holy
For,
cow, really?
yeah,
Oh my goodness. I thought it was going to be like maybe 1 million per mile in terms of water. Um,
no, no.
wow.
It was gonna, no, no. I mean, there is I see no, this is just me, I could be convinced otherwise. I see no feasible economic way for it to occur. And if it did, we would end up as Natick 2.0. And I came from Natick. It's a lovely town if you want to have your neighbor right next to you, but you
Yeah,
know,
I don't think I agree with that second part about Natick 2.0 because if you can limit the line to town center, then you're really talking about development along Coolidge Street. It's not like you're going to spread across the rest of
what would be
Sherborn.
the benefit?
Well, the benefit would be we wouldn't have to have our own water treatment system and operation and maintenance in Sherborn. Like we wouldn't have to have, I don't know, a water department that has to manage that. You would just be getting clean water from somebody else. That's kind of like you're sort of outsourcing that component of like treating it and having personnel and testing it, that kind of thing.
Well, how about this? Just to have the development in the North Sherborne area, there's going to be a whole commission. There's going to be a separate company that charges rates and all of that just for that little area and the people who tap into the water and sewer and there are going to be fees involved and yada yada yada
Hmm.
just for that. So I don't know why something like that
Hmm.
wouldn't, there's gonna be, employees running that just for that little section of Sherborne. I don't know that we would get rid of a water department. It would just be shifted to, in this case, an independent private company.
Okay.
That's what Dover has in some parts. They have
And
two
Yeah.
private companies, I
I can
think.
tell you that the fees charged, at least that I have heard of, I could be wrong, are at times unbelievable. $1,000 a month fees for
Really?
water.
At Aquarian?
I don't, this is a hearsay. I can tell you though, when we were looking for a new home in 2020, we ended up avoiding Dover simply because we heard of $800 water
Wow.
bills, $1,000 water bills. I don't know how much water was being used, but they have a bit of a monopoly, is my understanding, and I don't mean to slander anybody, and please don't sue me if you listen to this and I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the water bills have gotten extraordinarily high.
Wow. Okay. No, I mean this is good to know. Um, okay. All right. No, you're convincing me that it's not really even worth, and then this extra hurdle of like an interbasin transfer sounds like a lot of paperwork and potentially a waste of time. Um,
I don't know, but it is, yeah, they're gonna grapple with it. Oops. Jeannie says something. So Jeannie says she's gonna ask her son what the water bill is.
yeah, and actually, a woman at the that works the front desk at Pine Hill, she lives in one of the condo associations in Dover, and I think they're served by Aquarian. Um,
There's another Colonial, isn't a Colonial the other water? I don't remember the name of it, but there's a second one for other parts. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
I heard there were two. I
Yeah.
I didn't know their names, but
okay.
It's Colonial. That is what Bud has. Okay. I will not comment further. I just heard that they were very, very high bills.
So when we maybe Meredith, I think you did like some bit of analysis on this and sent out a spreadsheet, and I just can't remember what was in it. It had to do with
Mm-hmm.
tax revenue from the
Mm-hmm.
businesses in town center.
Or just tax revenue. Let me find that. Let me find that. Um,
Is the reason I ask is because the idea of, one of the concepts of bringing in the water is to expand like the revenue base, the tax revenue base beyond just home ownership, to get more from businesses in downtown. And we think that, oh, by bringing a more reliable source of water, more businesses would like to set up downtown. But then we saw somewhere that the theoretical like footprint expansion that can even happen in downtown is about double. So that kind of tells you, if you double, it would be basically the double the revenue we're getting right now. And if that's not really all that much, then that's kind of a tough sell to be like, oh, we should pay all this money to bring water downtown.
yeah, I can pull up. Jeremy sent me some actual data. I will reiterate that this is back of the envelope, very quick look into just where taxes are coming from. It's from this website, ownwell.com, Trends, Massachusetts. And my guess is that they are just some sort of an aggregator that's pulling in tax rates from various towns. And also, I also looked up, I believe on Wikipedia or something to that effect. Could also be, because it's been long enough that I don't even remember, could also have been on this site, population, square miles, density, and so on and so forth. And I got like an average cost. Whoops, there's another chat. Let's see. Um, uh, when he's not running an irrigation system, it's 70 per month. Okay, well, that's not so bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, between
I
1,000 and 1,300 a year or
there
something seems
there
reasonable.
was I will look into it more, but we ended up not purchasing in Dover in part because of, at least in 2020, what we had heard about charges for water. It's a
Mhm.
been a little while, but what what I determined was the estimated town revenue. So if we wanted to compare Dover and Sherborn as our two, average house size similar, total household similar, density people similar. Their average house price is higher than ours.
Well, Meredith, let me just stop you real quick. What I was interested in, and you sent this, it was like a town report or something, for Sherburne only, and it was like strictly a number
Oh,
of revenue raised
oh,
from the
yeah, yeah, okay,
businesses, and I want to
yeah.
say it was less than 2 million. I think it was quite a bit
Yeah,
less
it
than 2
was
million.
I think Jeremy sent that to me. Jeremy,
Yeah.
Rev.
And I think it was an Excel you sent me. And I remember looking at it and thinking, man, that's really not a lot of money if we double that number.
No, oh, Robbie, his name was Robbie Alford. He sent back something. Here, let me open it. Um, I am slower than slow, sorry.
No, I
Let me
can't find
open
it
this
either.
one up. I have it. Let
Okay.
me get it up. And I guess it's that one. Do you see that?
Yeah, sorry. I'm
Yeah.
I'm on my phone. For some reason this
That's
laptop is
okay. So
janky.
this is assessment of the types of land, and let me go back and get the other attachment from that same email. And all right, this is not the one that we wanted. Just hang on. It is this one. Okay, so let's look at this. So residential, we get almost 30 million. Commercial, 500,000. industrial,
Mm-hmm.
50,000.
Yeah. Okay. 500,000 basically.
Yeah.
So it'd be, if we doubled, it'd be 1 million then, right? Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So
Double it.
we'd be gaining another 500,000 by spending
10 million or
10
tens of
million.
million. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And people, I mean, people choose to come to Sherborn. This is my opinion. I could be swayed, I'm sure, with maybe some difficulty, but they come to Sherborn because of the space. And I would fear that bringing water in, although one could imagine it might be higher quality on average or something like that, instead of this body, occasionally there's a well that goes bad because the neighboring septic system fails or what have you. Um, it would fundamentally change, it would open the door for fundamentally changing the character of Sherborn.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we moved here knowing that the taxes would be sky high. And we knew that, and we accepted that, I'm sure the same was true for you, Taylor. Like you came here knowing that your taxes would be high because we are what funds the schools and the police and yada yada yada. Whereas when we were in Natick previous and we had a third of the property tax bill, although per per price of house, per dollar of house value, it was more than a third. If we averaged it would have been, maybe 2/3 if we did apples to apples in terms of house value. And we knew that was because of the Natick Mall and all of that helped support it. But also, they see bigger fluctuations. Ours is more steady. I don't know, depending on tax revenue. Like after COVID, I know their tax rates went up simply because revenue went down. Or that's what I heard, I should say.
Well, then, I mean, I think if you presented this, like what we have, we don't have like perfect numbers, but if you presented this at like an annual town meeting, for example, that, all right, we're asking the town for $10 million and for the hope that we can draw businesses into downtown only.
Well, I don't know who would
Yeah.
be asking that. I don't think I would be asking that. Who would be asking that?
No, I'm just saying, I'm just presenting this to the town. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess. It's
Okay,
just that
okay.
I think a lot of people would not go for that from a cost standpoint, from a way it changes the town standpoint. I think you're fronting a lot of money if you live like on the outskirts of town center for a lot of development in town center that you're not necessarily benefiting from, other than like a minuscule tax revenue increase that, I don't know. It just doesn't seem, I'm just doing like a rudimentary cost benefit. It just doesn't seem like the case is there for really bringing water to town center and sewer. Now there are little
Well,
pieces, there are
except
little like,
except if we wanted to think about, how to ensure that, all the things that Chief Ward was talking about, like being able
right,
to ensure that Pine Hill could
exactly.
have sprinklers even.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
The one, so then there's like these little offshoot things that are potentially worth an investment. For me, like strong advocate for getting sprinklers up to Pine Hill School, that kind of thing, where it's like you don't necessarily need a full on water and sewer system for the town center, but we could do these other pieces that could solve
Yeah.
some risks, some serious risks that a lot of people in town would care
Yeah,
about, I
like
think.
having a water tower up there if possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking over the old notes, and I would like to have either me or one of us reach out to Upton, because that was the town that Chief Ward said was sort of like the closest model that seemed to have a functioning um, system for fire suppression, even though they had wells and septic like like we do. And that's where he came from, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it's been a little bit since I looked over the minutes, but that was where he was last. So reaching out to them and asking, you know, how's that working? How do they have it set up? You know, I think that would be good. And I have failed. I have failed to reach out to them. So
So you just have some tanks like for water? I mean,
they
for
have a water
like
tower.
for
My
hydrants or something?
recollection, yeah, they
Yeah.
have a water tower that can feed a pressurized, you know, more extended flow for water suppression. But I never did call them. I never did call them. So we could pull up the minutes. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. So when's your next meeting with the
for the North
North Water?
Sherborn, it is June 4th. And then there's also Groundwater Protection Committee tomorrow at 7:30. And I'm sure I could clarify many details that I have a very poor memory of, as you can tell. I'm just sort of speaking. Maybe some of it is accurate, probably a lot of it is not. Could ask at least some of it, but June 4th is the next North Sherborn Water Sewer District Interim Committee meeting.
Okay. Any more on that, or you want to move on to the next item here?
Next item, I think. What do you
Oh,
think,
okay.
Taylor?
I'm just Googling about how much water a water tower can on average generally holds, anywhere from 250,000 to 1 million gallons, which is the reason I'm looking that up is because Chief Ward mentioned he was likely going to bring to annual town meeting a request for more 40,000 gallon cisterns in certain areas where there's high risk of fire. And he said it's about 100 to 120K to put in a 40,000 gallon cistern. These water towers are way bigger than that.
Yeah, and Spy would, but he would need they would need those just because of the land area. It's, what is it, 16 square miles? I don't remember how many total Sherborne is spread out over. But he said Spywood was, I think, #1 on his list for one of those.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
couple
He said that.
thoroughbred.
I was impressed with the system he has in each vehicle to, when they pull up, it gives them automatically from the address what the closest water sources are, you know. That must help quite a bit, you know, you don't have to stop to figure it out.
Yeah, Spywood, he says, is a 12-minute ride, and it's dry half the year. So it needs a 40,000 gallon cistern, most likely. Yeah, so that water tower that you're talking about could pressurize the dry hydrant system.
Yeah.
That's worth looking into.
And you could fill that with a well that wouldn't have to be pure, not necessarily, you know what I mean? If you,
Yeah, that's true. It might not have to be
yeah,
to drinking
yeah,
water standards. I don't know what the rules
Or
are
it
on
could
that, but
be, you know, it also
yeah,
could be.
yeah. And you could, if it wasn't something that was being used daily, you could have it run, you know, 15, 16 minutes an hour for 3 or 4 months just to keep it filled. You know, you wouldn't have to suck something dry to fill it up right away. You could maybe fill it up with some sort of truck to begin with, and then just keep adding to it. You wouldn't have to have something that was being drawn on all the time.
And I also think if I remember correctly, which I may not be, the thought was that it would be a much shorter distance to get the Morse pond well hooked up to a tank on Pine Hill. You know, like that could be, it could be both. It could be both systems all at one, in one.
Yeah.
Because, you know, their water takes all over the Midwest. That's what they do for a lot of their water, so. But my thinking is that is a role that we could play to look into to find out how to really solve certainly the water, you know, potable water in town center, but I have no doubt that just they could pretty readily put on filters and it would not be a financial burden that's insurmountable to get those up, you know, up to code. But that if we can figure out what is a good fire suppression system for Sherborn and make sure that that gets also replicated or improved upon for large apartment complexes that might be built within the borders of Sherborn, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm just following the road from Price Woodlands or whatever that
Yeah,
it's
Price,
called.
that's right. Price
I think
Road.
that's what it's
Yeah,
called
that's
at the
right.
end of
That's
Morris
right.
Road there
Yeah.
up to Pine Hill. If you just follow the road and you don't like cut under, you know, do a direct line, it's like 3,600 feet.
Yeah, it's not
So
that far.
not, you know, significantly less than a mile. Um, that's not that bad. It's a lot of uphill, but
But then that's all downhill from there to supply the
yeah,
rest of the
exactly. There you go.
town.
Got all
But
that potential energy up there.
yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, cool. Something fun to look into.
Yeah.
Now, here's potentially a dumb question, but could you use some of the water from the water tower to pipe over to town center?
I think
For
so. I think that was, yeah, why not? Don't you think?
I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so. If I recall, isn't that kind of what Roger was telling us about? I mean, it's
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
as I always tell my daughter, I have the memory of a gnat. I mean, like, I forget things, but yeah, it seemed like that's what they had been planning to do.
So you could have it there with the initial intent of fire suppression, but with the option to tie into providing water to new businesses in town center.
And the problem is that none of the businesses downtown meet the regs. In other words, their septic systems are too close to
Right.
their wells. So you wouldn't have to do both. It'd be nice to do both, but if you just did the water, then you wouldn't have to be quite so worried about the septic as far as contamination is
Good
concerned.
point. Good point.
Although everything is interdependent in Sherborn, so I would not want the septic system. Yeah, like I would still want the septic systems in compliance as much as possible. But if the well water wasn't pumped from right next to a septic system, that would be preferred.
Right. Well, I mean, they're not in compliant because they're next to the wells now, where if
Yeah.
they took the wells away, it would open that up a bit.
Yeah, that would be good.
Huh.
Okay, if we could maybe discuss number 6 on there, the outside water use, I think, which I think Tom Trainer and Bart wanted to talk about that too. Is that you're right. Any regulations like this, there's going to be pushback and people say, it's my water, it's this and that. But I was thinking that if we could look at what Dover has done and sort of see what we might find acceptable perhaps for Sherborn, because if we are going to have any sort of regulation, the time to do it is not during a real drought. You want to do it when they think it's never going to be happen. And then you have to think about who's going to do it. I think in Dover, I think it's the people who actually pull the trigger, I think would be the selectmen. In other words, the water people and the conservation and the Board of Health might have recommendations, but I think it'll be the selectmen's deal on whether or not to have it. But right now we have almost all these new houses that are going in have automatic sprinkler systems.
Well, here is, Tom knows my opinion. I will express it here, and people can disagree with me, but I looked up the water transpiration rate of a single tree, and I compared it to the water, like the well use for a family. And I think the comparison is one family in a year uses the same amount of water taken up and evaporated through transpiration of like 3 trees or 4 trees, like something like that. One family is equivalent to 4 trees, and we live in a forest. So I was thinking, if we cut down our water use 10%, 20% in the summer, is it really going to make a difference?
Or we could cut the trees down, right?
Or we could cut the trees down. Exactly.
That's how you get Natick 2.0.
Yeah, right.
I think, I think just the idea has to be tested at the fundamental level. Would it help? And if the answer is yes, then I would be more than happy to try to figure out something that seems reasonable. But if there's a regulation that on the surface seems like it would have no net effect and would just tick off a lot of people for no net effect, then I'm saying no. Especially if down the line there's going to be some need to put some house somewhere, and then there's something equivalent to the interbasin transfer, regulation in the way, when there's no net effect or very little. That is my opinion. But I would be willing to flesh that out more. But a standard oak tree is about 30,000 gallons per year, through transpiration.
Yeah, it might be interesting to see what Dover has done, because Natick has had some restrictions too, as far as water use.
But people, I don't know that, I would ask, what was their thinking? What research did they do? What calculations did they make? Natick, there is not a whole lot of trees around. There are very much fewer of them, and their density is much higher. And so I could see a regulation mattering to them, but I'm just not convinced that it would have an impact in Sherborn with the density of people and the density of trees.
Right. I don't know whether Dover has actually put the hammer down yet on. I know they have on some of their water systems. They told them some of the one water company in Dover has put restrictions on. And it's not a total ban, but it's, alternate days or 9 to 5 at night or something, a couple hours at night. They're trying to do it. So
Jeannie has a question. Go for it, Jeannie.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
In Dover, they do have the signs up already about water. They have them throughout the town. My feeling is that when we had that really bad drought a couple of years ago, and my neighbor was still running her irrigation system without even thinking about what it was doing to maybe my well, which is fairly shallow. So I don't see the harm in like starting to educate people that, hello, so
Yes.
you're going to have a dirty, a dirt lawn or a brown lawn. It comes back.
Yes. I think when I brought this up in the groundwater protection committee, I think that for at least a brief time, that was sort of what was thought. Although I think it's probably not stuck there, but there was a mention that maybe just educating people, this is drawing from the surface waters, you know, you
Yeah.
don't have to. But the other thing that I brought up, and this was another thing I was supposed to look into for groundwater protection committee and have not yet, was that my understanding is that for septic systems to work fully properly, there has to be, it does not, sopping wet is not right, but it cannot go bone dry and work sufficiently, because then cracks develop in the soil below the leaching field, and then you can get insufficient, um,
Uh,
you know,
I don't have
processing.
irrigation, so and my septic system, knock on wood.
Yeah, it's good so far. That's good. I can tell you that our house during the drought a couple years back, a crack opened up more. So there was definitely settling of the soil. Like there was an additional drying that went deep enough to increase a crack that we had in our basement just through, the lack of liquid kind of almost like,
Supporting it, yeah.
yeah, supporting so the drought did hit the dryness of the soil pretty deep enough, at least for a basement.
Okay,
But
that's only my thought. That was all.
yeah. But I mean, I'm not trying to be unkind, but a tree does, a significant amount of, and I'm not going to cut down the trees, the trees are welcome to use the water. And then other people mention, well, the water that they're drawing from is different from the water in their wells, and that's true. But I also had found a paper where the delay in actual groundwater decline was actually a fair number of months out from the drought itself. I just would want to have it, would the regulation do what people think it is going to do? If the answer is yes, then sure. But if it doesn't do what people think it's going to do, then I think I would be opposed to a regulation that is there just to feel like you're doing something when in fact it's not having the effect that you want. And in turn could have an unintended consequence down the road. And I think we could just, I think research could be done that I have not done, and I'm on these committees, so I do need to do that. But
Okay. All right, well, it's something that probably will come up at your meeting with the groundwater too, at some point in time.
if I have time tomorrow, it reminds me I've got to do my part on that.
Yeah. So when did you say your next North Sherborn was again? Your next
June
meeting?
4th.
Oh, June 4th. Oh, so okay, so when do you think it would be advantageous for us to meet again?
Probably after that.
Right.
Finding out information, I will look up drought stuff, and thank you for reminding me before tomorrow. I have a little bit of time tomorrow. We'll look into that some. Looking into Upton, calling Upton and asking them about how their system is set up would be nice. And then finding more about what happens with this interbasin transfer stuff, which is at a level above me right now by far. Having all of those pieces back would be good. Is there anything else, Taylor or Frank, you think we should look into before we meet again?
Yeah, I don't really have it like scoped out perfectly, but I do want to look a little bit more into, costs of water towers and what's gone into them in other towns, just kind of like case studies.
Well, that would be good because, it's probably, you get some price per foot, like to get up to the
Yeah,
tower and then,
just a ballpark.
yeah.
Are you
Okay.
willing to do that, Taylor? Do you want to look into that?
Yeah, no,
some?
I mean, I will. I'll put it on my list, and then like, my dad had a heart attack, so it was like, okay, my
Yeah, I'm
list went
sorry.
out the window. You know what I mean? So it's like it's
How is he
something may come
doing?
up, and then that gets bumped, but it'll be on my list, and I'm genuinely interested in it, so it makes me more inclined to do it.
If you were willing to look into it at, like cursory level, that would be
Yeah,
very awesome.
yeah, no problem.
And
Are
I
you
will
pleased?
genuinely look into the drought stuff, but with my bias but my bias is just that I would want it to be shown that I don't trust that other towns will do things because they are reasonable. I believe other towns do things for reasons that we don't know, and maybe they looked into them even from like a genuine water, usage reduction point of view, but they also could have just done it because everybody else does it. I mean, when I've heard it being discussed in our town, it's, well, these people did it or those people did it.
Right.
Someone has to sit down and fundamentally look at, would it help? And maybe they have and maybe they have, but I don't trust that they necessarily have.
All right. Now, is June 18th a day that's the last day of school is the 17th. The 18th. Is that a date that works for people, or would you want to put something
Yeah.
further out?
Well, I'm available June 18th.
I will be on vacation with my family, but I'm willing to meet. I would just be not at home. I would be meeting from just a place, but I would be willing to do it that night.
Okay,
If
so
it's the week before, I guess I would prefer it very slightly, but
Yeah.
doesn't have to be.
What
all
about
right,
Tuesday, June 10th?
let me look back here. Yeah, that would work for me.
Okay.
Okay, so 8 p.m. again.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
We get the baths done and the kids, all that. Yeah, they're kids.
Okay, I'll pencil that in.
And I won't forget you.
And
Oh, Jeannie,
I promise.
it was busy today.
Yes.
It was busy today. But, and I just, I'm pleased with the,
okay, and then Taylor, you'll get some minutes. Not that you have any huge volume of minutes to write for this meeting, but
Yeah, no,
to
I
approve the
will.
next one.
Yeah, and Jeannie, question for you. How do I get the recording from this meeting? Because I may want to go back while I'm writing up the minutes.
When I get it, I can forward it to you. Usually I send it off to Dover Sherborn Cable, and they post it on YouTube and Dover Sherborn Cable.
Perfect. Okay.
But when it comes through, I'll just send it to you.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
So, is there anything else? Or are we ready to adjourn here?
I'm ready to adjourn, Frank.
Okay, make the
Oh,
motion.
Meredith, we've got to go get sworn in again, Meredith, just a reminder.
okay,
Oh.
okay. I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that motion, Meredith.
So, Frank, aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
guys.
Thank
Right,
you all.
good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Seeing
you.
guys.
Thank
See
you,
you later.
Jeannie. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Take it. Bye now.